we've got to have a good mixture. So I feel like there's this evolution going on, the cycle of life where we're kind of going back to the basics of marketing 10 years ago.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have Sherri Schwartz, who is the head of marketing at Ovation CXM, where she leads the company's efforts in creating innovative, AI-driven customer experience solutions. With over 15 years of experience in marketing and leadership, Sherri has successfully rebranded Ovation CXM and played a pivotal role in the company's growth. She focuses on blending creativity with data-driven decision-making to craft compelling marketing strategies that resonate with customers across multiple industries, from finance to healthcare. And I heard a whole bunch more before we got on the show here, which I'm excited to dive into. Sherri, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine. I'm really excited to get into some of the work that you're doing with Ovation and what that rebrand looked like and some of your past experiences. So to start with, maybe we'll go with a couple of minutes on who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the head of marketing at Ovation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started my career doing sales for the military. So I sold everything from boots to body armor to underwater robots and mine detectors. Secured a lot of different government contracts, worked with a lot of vendors. It was great. But I relocated several different times with my husband and I in our careers and kind of following him. So I left that world, went into financial services, then left there and went into fintech, and then um, back into dabbled in some sports marketing technology, and back to fintech, and then went to telecommunications and back into financial services. It keeps coming back to me. It's been great. It's been really fun. I've held a lot of different roles. I think for me, the turning point in my career was actually when I was at Encino and I was their first product marketer. And this was back when we were only maybe 130 people. And then by the time I left, we were at IPO and over 1,000 employees. And so I grew the product marketing arm there. And that's when I think my love for B2B tech and SaaS developed, and I wanted to expand, and was fortunate enough through my career since then to expand into brand and creative and demand generation to the point where I've been able to, for multiple organizations now, grow marketing teams from the ground up and expand. So
Incredible exposure to experiences and the accomplishments there are immeasurable. Just some of the growth that you've played a role in is tremendous, and that deserves some recognition. I'm very present to just how challenging the B2B space is, and when we were talking about this off camera, the fintech space is a very complicated uh, uh, space to be a part of, and I'm sure that maybe lends to how interesting and your natural curiosities to want to keep coming back to that. I wonder how some of those early experiences have helped shape your approach to the work that you do. Could you maybe expand on how what your approach is to the kind of the creative aspects of the work that you do?
yeah, I think when you're selling into financial services, number one, you have to have patience. The
Mm,
deal cycles are notoriously longer. And so if you take deal cycles that were pretty long in 2015 through 2019, and then you place yourself selling into financial services in 2020 and beyond, especially the last 2 years, the way that regional banking kind of self-imploded for a little bit there, and the challenges now within enterprise banks, lots of leadership changes, lots of pause and reconsideration of where AI fits into the grand scheme of things,
mm,
buying versus building. What we've notoriously seen is sales cycles haven't shortened. If anything, they've gone a little bit longer. So when you become so used to selling in that world where it's a longer buying cycle, what you then develop as a marketing skill is patience, number one, and a long game vision. And I think it's so easy to get wrapped up when you're in an enterprise and you need revenue fast to focus a lot on the short. Like, what am I going to do for quick revenue today? But I think it's that long game strategy that you cannot lose focus in. And it also becomes super important as a marketing executive to be able to synthesize, the strong value points when you're going to bat for budget or for extra resources, or to just present the facts of what's going on in the marketplace, to be able to show quick wins, but also maintaining that, hey, listen, these are the other things that we have to continue to focus on and we can't lose sight of, because this is going to work and pay off dividends long term. It's not going to give you what you need today, but we have to stay on track, because the smallest little pivots left are going to get us off topic and it's going to hurt us. So I think that when you're used to and have been selling into that environment for a while, even before, the economic factors that we've all found ourselves in, and to be honest with you, it doesn't matter what industry nowadays, 22 and 23 and 24 have not been kind to us in this economic downturn. But when you're used to that type of environment where compliance and risk, especially in financial services, it's always been there. I think it's allowed me to embrace this time and where we're at in whether you're industry agnostic, healthcare, legal, retail, you name it. Business is hard right now, and marketers are forced to do more with less resources, and in many instances, less budget as well. And so I think when you're used to that environment, it makes it a little bit more, okay, just another day in the office.
There's this balancing act that
Yeah.
I'm picking up on between the short-term goals, like you
Yeah.
said, kind of like how do we get revenue quickly, and then the long-term goals, which is like, okay, how do we keep the ship afloat and keep it barreling towards the destination that we're aiming at, and continue to innovate and create new solutions for the people that you're serving. So for you, how do you strike that balance between, okay, here's some really short-term wins that we can stack up versus, hey, here's a really big long-term play that we need to do, because if we don't, we're not going to be in a position to capitalize on these future opportunities.
Yeah, I really look at brand awareness as like the biggest long-term gain for your business. And then demand gen kind of plays in the middle of it. And then
Mm.
you've got these short, impactful campaigns that can draw attention or influence rather quickly in deals. And so, I mean, if you think about it, so when I joined Ovation CXM, we didn't really have a marketing department, and we were formerly known as Boomtown. And this is a
Oh.
great example, because when I joined in May of 22, within 3 months, I needed to rebrand the organization. We were primarily a services organization, built our own technology, and then decided to pivot and really rebrand ourselves to align more with our SaaS technology that we developed, our CXM platform. And we weren't going to get rid of the services, but we were going to expand and wanted our identity to be tied to what was growing in the marketplace within CXM. And so had to build a team, had to rebrand the organization, had to relaunch an entire website, brand new messaging, you name it, within 3 months. And then I had to go in and go, okay, well, how are we going to make ourselves known in the marketplace? We're still more of a startup scale up organization. So you don't have the enterprise dollars, right, to do it. And that's where brand awareness came in. And it's running these long-term gains on messaging and, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel ads. It's getting into the PR, it's tapping into your investors and their network. And it's doing very, very strategic things that always puts brand first. Because if you think about it, nobody knew who we were except for us as Boomtown. And that's not what we wanted to be known as anymore. We needed to pivot into this new direction. And it doesn't make sense for me just to focus on short term, because I need to build a lasting pipeline year over year. And so I've got to make sure that we have this new identity that's brewing in a marketplace that didn't know that we existed. And so that's where that brand really comes in, and you can't lose focus of that. And then when you're pivoting and you're looking at quick wins, it's like, I don't think that you need to spend money anymore and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to sponsor events. What about quick win happy hours? What about quick dinners? We just hosted one that was relatively inexpensive in New York City, and brought in some of our prospects that were more middle of funnel or closer to signing, and a couple of net news. That way, you tapped into your existing customers, and we had a couple of our champions at the dinner as well. Nothing does better brand and demand generation than hearing your customers at a dinner talk about how much they love you, and those prospects very close to signing, and even the net news who really didn't know who you were but took you up on a free dinner, got to hear about it firsthand. That beats any case study video or ad I could run all day long for more money. So
There,
I can host this dinner for less with greater impact.
yeah, that's an incredible strategy to go from that top of funnel, like high level awareness, branding, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to touch on that in a second. But then to get, I call it the Hail Marys, right? There's like we're going to put a little chunk of money on this one thing and see how well it performs. And so for small businesses, this looks like I call them like straight for the kill ads. Hey, we do this thing. If you want this thing, let us know and we'll do that thing. And it's so blatant, it's so
Yep.
honest and upfront that sometimes you can hit it out of the park with a really, really simple campaign, but it does fizzle out. And so that's why over the long term, you still need to be running that top of funnel brand awareness
Well,
stuff.
yeah, you're right. And that's where I think your content plan comes into place as well. When we rebranded the organization, we really tackled, all right, let me put down the top 5 questions, top 10 questions that people are going to have about us. What are the misconceptions? What do we think that we are that, and what do customers or prospects actually think that we are? And where are those gaps? So you identify those gaps when you're doing your rebrand, and you go build your content machine around identifying those gaps. So for us, it was very much, well, what is CXM? And why is CXM, or how is CXM different than a CRM? Or does it replace a CRM? Or does it augment and work with a CRM? These were things that we needed to answer in the marketplace as a rebranded CXM company, because it wasn't widely known, and not a lot of what is journey orchestration and what is ecosystem connectivity? What do those things mean? So we built a lot of this content, both in long form, short form, video form. And we are still utilizing that content today. Now, we do audits of it very frequently, but it's just now, almost 2 years later, we're trending on those old pieces of content that we put out 2 years ago. That's the reason why I go back and I go, like, content and brand awareness works. You have to be very patient with it, but it can pay off dividends in the long run. These things that, you want quick wins, and content can sometimes it's just not that. You've got to build it. And then when people start seeing it and that multi-touch attribution takes place, then they start searching for it. They're going to find you. And so I think that that's been a really big piece for us not to lose out on. And we are fortunate enough to have a relationship with a video agency that allows us to create as many videos as we can handle sending to them. And I mean, just this last year alone, we created 195 videos. But you're thinking product videos, thought leadership videos, slice and dicing all of those for a variety of different social snippets to put on Twitter or X and LinkedIn and Facebook, or YouTube or Vimeo. And that's a big piece of our content strategy as well. 95% of your buyers are not actively in the buying phase any given point of time. Only 5% are actively looking. And then when you break out the 95, it's broken out into other segments and other percentages. A top percentage, of them don't know you exist and don't know they have a problem. So you got to write content for that. Then another one knows they have a problem, but don't know you exist. So you have to write for that. And then they know they have a problem. They know you exist, but they haven't quite figured out in their buying cycle that you might be the answer to that. You got to write for that. And then they start slowly getting ready for you. And that's where a lot of that middle and bottom of funnel come. But think about the varieties of stages that takes a really long time, the varieties of channels, and you got to hit for all of that. And so that's where I just think that, like, you've got to really, especially if you're considering rebranding an organization, or you're a startup scale up organization that just doesn't have the enterprise capacities, you have to put a lot of attention in to your brand awareness, to the objections in the marketplace, to what people think you are, to what you want to be, and really solve for content gaps right there.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a group of people, 5%, that are both solution aware, or sorry, problem aware and solution aware, and those
And
are the ones that are
actively searching for you.
right. And so they're out there in the world trying to find that solution because they know they have the problem, they know they have the solution. So that means that if we take one of those two things away, which is the solution aware, there are a larger subsect of people who are problem aware. Like they know that there is a problem here, but they don't know what the solution is to this. So now they're still in those early research phases. And then there's
Yeah.
this whole other group of people that we almost never really address who aren't aware that a problem exists until they get exposure to it. And so it sounds like the those are the three targets that you aim at when you create content
Yeah.
intentionally is that, hey, these people here, the 5%, we got stuff for that. Oh, hey,
Yeah.
this other 30% we got for that. And then the 65% or whatever the math is on the rest of them, we're also doing work for that as well, so that you kind of capturing the attention of all of those people and slowly bringing them in. So that could also be interpreted as short-term wins, those like really quick
Love.
wins, the medium kind of like, yeah, we're nurturing this towards it, and then the long-term gains on the other side.
Yeah. It's
That's
a
really
lot.
cool.
It
Yeah.
is. Then it's a lot too, right? And so, we're a four-person marketing team. So there's myself, our director of content, our director of product marketing, and then our graphic designer. And then we have fortunately gotten to partner with a video agency. But that's our team. Like that's the core. So, I mean, we have to ruthlessly prioritize. We have to really understand our market. And it has taken us, and when you are a smaller organization with smaller resources too, you have to you got to get the quick wins, but you can't let, man, this is taking a long time. Oh my gosh, is this ever going to pay off? You can't ever lose sight of that long term. And your patience is such a great virtue because now we're celebrating, 2.5 years later after rebrand, these trends and how people are finding us now and the top search results to stumble across us are those things that we passionately set out in the first 3 months of our rebrand to solve for. And they're paying off dividends for us now. And so now we need to look back and go, okay, well, what are the next things to write for and to solve for? And that's where our positioning is shifting into 2025 into the exploration of going back to really the basics of marketing and go into use cases. And then we've got to
Mm,
dive a lot deeper into that. It's funny as I look through my marketing career, way back when you talked really about here's what you do and how you do it. And then all of a sudden marketing pivoted to no, you got to lead with the ROI. And then what I've naturally seen over time is everybody's now talking about the ROI and we all do different things. So you could do CRM, CXM, digital onboarding, you name it. Throw some fintech out there or some other technology out there. And we're all saying, we're going to help you reduce your operating costs, or we're going to help you reduce your churn, or we're going to help you grow revenue. Okay, but so did like 700 other companies out there. We're all saying the same thing. So if you can all do that, what makes you different? And the thing that now makes you different is going back to marketing from years ago. And it's going back to the basics of those use case stories and painting the picture of the art of the possible and how a variety of companies are specifically using you to solve the problems and how they're purchasing and how they're solving for it. I think it's funny, we're going back to more basics. Just like 10 years ago it was all about brand, and then it became into no, solve for the ROI, and you became data overloaded. And now what you see a lot in the industry is going, okay, but we now got to go back to the qualitative stuff too. We can't only and solely focus on the data. We've got to have a good mixture. So I feel like there's this evolution going on, the cycle of life, where we're kind of going back to the basics of marketing 10 years ago.
I I have this idea that as we evolve in marketing, it's like we're going through this really, really big building and we're switching on lights. And when we turn on one light, boom, we can see that thing that we were pointing at. So if you kind of look through the evolution, it's like, oh, hey, we need to talk about features and benefits, right?
Yeah.
That's what people want. But then that dries up and it doesn't work anymore, and that part of the machine breaks, and so we got to turn on another light. And we go, okay, well, if that's not it, what else is it? Oh, it's emotional transformation as it relates to features and benefits. And but that sheds a little bit more light on a couple of other things. And so as we do this, as we keep turning things on, we keep having to shift things around, move things around,
Okay.
and then it calls into focus the kind of still in the dimmer parts of the light around the room is attribution.
Mhm.
To your point, 2 years ago, you guys made some really killer content about a topic that was very little known, but you
Yeah.
knew that it would serve your audience.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 2 years later, the people who didn't know it existed have slowly been researching. That term starts catching on. Now everybody is talking about, whatever that term is. And then they go, oh, this is where we have to find that thing. And then they go and they engage with your business or somebody else's business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think it was Chris Walker, somebody on an earlier guest on the podcast told me about, and he is advocating for this idea of the dark funnel, which
Mhm.
is the parts of our funnel that we're not really paying attention to. So I'll give you what his example looks like. It's like you create this article or you talk on a podcast or whatever, there's something out there. Somebody like learns about a concept that you mentioned. Then they go to Google and they start searching that concept. And then they land on a completely unrelated blog article. And then from that blog article, they like learn a little bit. Maybe they opt into your newsletter and then they go about their daily business. And then later, there's an ad on Facebook from your business because they touched your website and have a pixel. And so that triggered this other campaign. And now they make a purchase.
Mhm.
And so where in that kind of entire habitat of events do we say that, oh, that's why the customer's here? Was it because of that first level content? Was it because they searched and landed on you? Was it because the Facebook ad? And I think the problem that we have as marketers is we're being tasked with attribution, and where we
Mhm.
can't find attribution, we just make a determination that, oh, this is the last touch point. And so the attribution part of it had to get more and more sophisticated. But
Mhm.
again, that kind of does call into focus that idea of um, the short term, long term, and medium term goals that you're all setting up. So what's your take on that dark funnel side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I say the problem is, I think too, and I'm very empathetic towards it because I find it ourselves too, when you have start such small marketing budgets, you can't always afford all of the attribution software either.
Right,
And so like I like to always concentrate on like how if you're a smart startup scale up and you don't have a lot of that to allocate, how else are you determining it? And that's the reason why like I really just go through and I think it's super important as you're like putting cases together of like, okay, instead of spending all of this money on ads, we're also going to spend a little bit more attention on this other side that's a little more qualitative because in my perspective there isn't just like the perfect touch point. Because if you look at the entire journey from the moment where they weren't sure they had a problem or and they didn't even know you existed all the way until they're actively searching for you and ready to buy, you have hit them a variety of different times and a variety of different ways. So that one time from 2 years ago, they may have read your blog, like that's not necessarily the turning point. It's all of them.
right.
Every single one of those pieces, I believe, should be equally weighted because it took them a really long journey and multiple touch points until they got to the point where they were like, I keep seeing them around and I really like this story that they put out and I really identify with it. I'm ready to go demo and buy.
Well, and
And
then
yeah, no, go
what
ahead.
about what about in a case like I'll use WordPress as an example. Great platform for building websites. I use it myself. I've built hundreds of websites on it. Uh, but I didn't go to WordPress because of WordPress's marketing efforts. I went to WordPress because I bought a course about 15 or 20 years ago that taught me how to leverage Facebook ads to build a fan base on your Facebook page. And in
Yep.
there, it was like, oh yeah, to capture your fans, you need an email opt-in thing. So the guy taught me how to tie Aweber in with a WordPress Ninja Forms integration that allowed me to capture my emails and now do email marketing back to that person. And so it was this other guy that has no affiliation with WordPress whatsoever that just happened to say, hey, this is how I built my website when I did my marketing. And he made some money off of me buying that. IP, and now WordPress is like a hardwired part of my service offering to any of my clients.
Yeah.
So you can't even take a claim over that effort. How do you knowing that that's possible, how do you create that as an opportunity inside of the business for other people now to become advocates for your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a variety of different things. I think number one, I think you've really got to make sure you're also enabling your sales organizations to appropriately use all of the content. Also, understand as they're navigating the buyer's journey once they've raised their hand, that they also know what to send out at what level and at what stage of the deal. But then also, when they become customers, is to really, really work towards that customer advocacy and wanting
Mm,
them to be champions of you. Like, are we making their experience implementing and onboarding the best possible? What quotes are they saying in the middle of the implementation and onboarding process that we can repurpose for testimonials of even the experience of how easy it is to onboard with you? And how do we repurpose and get their stories out there? Because when you've got so many companies to choose from in some instances, and some, when you could have, five different companies saying that they do journey orchestration, I still believe they're going to buy based on the referrals and the testimonials and the word of mouth. And in
mm,
some instances, they'll purchase the more expensive product if it meant that the customers of their shape and size and their pain points are raving fans. And so I think that I think it just really goes back to really looking at making sure that customer advocacy portion of marketing during implementation and post implementation is also elevated into the stories that you share. And you've got to enable your sales reps too to make sure that they know exactly what stories and what levers to pull base. Do you have a library of the use cases built out that are super easy for your sales reps to navigate and pull from? These are just things that I
right.
like to kind of consider as we're building out not just top of funnel and middle of funnel content.
It's a big task to take on to be able to create stuff for to attract people on that even on that high level, right? And then in the middle and bottom, but then to also create such a remarkable product that the people who are using it become your advocate. And then beyond that, you give them the tools to be able to be an advocate more effectively or more efficiently. And so
Yeah.
um, I think that there's a big hole in the whole marketing engine for a lot of businesses that are missing out on that level of I don't know if I want to blanket term it with the idea of affiliate marketing, but I love the idea of client advocacy and rewarding them or incentivizing those efforts so that you can garner more referrals.
Yeah.
Why do you think businesses aren't pursuing that more intentionally?
I think there's a couple different ways. I've seen it. I mean, it's hard to sometimes get in and pick the brains and get the time with the customers
Hmm,
from a marketing perspective, being invited to have a seat at that table.
right.
Uh, and in some instances, if you're in sales, like, do you want to pursue that because you don't want to discount the product anymore? Then maybe you already have in order to get it. There's so many different factors, so many more organizations are saying, hey, not it. Like, I don't want to do a press release, or I don't want to do a case study. There's a couple things there that I like to consider. What is wrong with an anonymized case study as well, or use case story? I think sometimes you get wrapped up as a marketer to be like, no, I have to have that business's logo. But I think you can still craft anonymized stories that are very detail oriented and very, very specific that can help fill those gaps as well, especially if you're a startup scale up organization and you don't have a ton of customers. And maybe they're all at enterprise level and they're going, you'll never use my name and logo. Like, I'm not going to do it. We don't let anyone, but you can still anonymize that story and be able to tell it. And it goes back to, like, one of the best things that we did recently was host that dinner in New York and invite them all to a dinner. That current customer or two to have a seat at the dinner for great communion and, like, just relationship building. And then those that are, deeper in the funnel with you, and then the brand news, because number one, they're all in the same industry, so they can talk shop even outside of you. You know, we hosted a banking innovator center, so bankers getting to talk to each other. They like that. They absolutely like that. But then they can also personalize, you know, throughout the evening, these very specific conversations where a prospect can ask a customer about their experiences or say, hey, would love to dive deeper. Can we schedule a follow-up call? And the next thing you know, they're all talking to each other outside of the dinner and to explore even deeper and a little bit more. And that's what we've kind of found has also worked. It doesn't always have to be, hey, can we do a press release with you? Or it doesn't, or, you know, because in many instances they won't or they don't. That's just not how their business operates. But I think that you can tell great use case stories. I think you need to know how to market those use cases as well.
Hmm.
And that's a really big shift for us going into 2025. Like I'm in the thick right now of going, what worked and what didn't work this year? And I think one of the other things that I'm in the middle of getting ready to do too is really mark the varieties of different things that we've created in marketing and where did it fit?
Mm.
Did it help at the awareness stage? Did it help at the consideration stage? Did it help really convert this customer? Did it help at a referral standpoint? And if some of the content that we created doesn't fit any of those pieces, then maybe that's not content I go waste resource and energy on in 2025. And so I think that's super important too. If you're an organization right now going, what does my marketing look like in 25? I think we really need to go ahead and catalog all of your campaigns and all of your efforts, video, written. Where does it fall in the stages of acquiring and retaining a customer? And if it ended up being more of a distraction, then parking lot that and don't go after that the next time.
This is what I believe to be the distinction between, and forgive my ignorance here because I did want to look it up to be prepared. The difference between a CRM and a CXM is that one is meant to be uh, just dedicated to a very specific task, uh, attached to the sales function, right? Just relationship management. But when we look at journey management or experience management and really start to examine all of the places where we influence that buying decision, all of the places where we're communicating with the people who we could potentially serve, now we get a much different picture. And really what I'm picking up on is that there is um, a necessity to be creative and flexible and entertain ideas while remaining fluid and nimble in making a determination of whether or not those efforts are fruitful. And so there's this balancing act now between guessing and hypothesis, testing and results, and then making decisions based on the data that is collected through those first two elements. Does that resonate with you?
100%. And I think the smaller your team, in our instance, we have to be nimble, we have to be agile, and we have to be okay not seeking perfection because it might take too long, and instead seeking evergreen iterations and testing and making quick hypotheses, quick decisions, and really put our bets on the long game while carving out a percentage of time that allows us to be nimble and agile and consistently test. But I also think but that's the reason why you have to carve out the time at the very end of that year to really go back in and go, okay,
What worked?
with some of these pivots and squirrels that we chased, did they pan out? Or do I not chase those same squirrels in the next year? And because to be honest with you, quarterly, things change so fast for us. But I also think it's a superpower. I think that when you're a startup, scale up B2B marketer
Hmm.
and you're used to building from the ground up, you're used to running very agile teams, that like fluidity and that like easy like adaptation, it's a superpower. It's a superpower. It allows and you also just don't take things too personally ever or too seriously. You're like, okay, didn't work. No sweat off my back. Doesn't mean I'm a bad marketer. Okay.
Right. Yeah, you gotta move with the waves. Really great advice. Sherry, this has been wonderful. You've been very generous with your time and your wisdom, and I'm very grateful. And as we kind of reach a close of our time together here, I wonder if we kind of look a little bit forward at some of your bigger goals. What are you aiming at? What's on the horizon for you and Ovation?
Yeah, so for us from a content, we are going all in. We're going to continue to go all in on video. Every year for the last 2 years, we've produced more and more video. I think we're aiming to maybe complete over 200 this year. And we're putting all bets on video. We're putting all bets on our use case stories, and we're going back to the drawing board on our messaging and giving it a little bit more of a great refresh. And to really make sure people quickly identify exactly who we are and how we solve their pain points. And we're going to be looking a lot more at the longer form content that we can produce in the beginning of 21. My goodness, I'm going back in time. In the beginning of Q1 of 2025, that pays dividends and gives us all the content we need through the remainder of the year. So we can work smarter, not always harder. So that's kind of the goal for us right now. I'm looking forward to it. I think the team can actually agree. We're looking forward to that too.
That's very exciting. Um, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further, or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. I'm always down for, I'm a caffeine connoisseur addict, you name it, about 4 cups a day, and I'm flying high. So love to meet over coffee virtually. You could also email me, Sherri.Schwartz, SCHWARTZ, at ovationcxm.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and would love to virtually have a meetup.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to link to all that in the show notes so that people listening or watching can find you easily. On that note, if you wanted to reach out to me and my team for any of your AI or marketing needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and I will see you in the next.